Welcome back to Sat 7 Sports. We're back with the NFC reaction for the draft as I did AFC yesterday. This will be currently coming out. And unlike the AFC where most of the teams were either very positive on their picks to lukewarm at worst, there's going to be a little bit more variety on today's portion of reactions. So going on, starting off with the NFC East, you get the Eagles, who got 10 picks overall, had two questionable picks at the very beginning, getting Jalen Reagor from TCU, kind of a speedster, deep threat target. Remember, Justin Jefferson was on the board, and then Jalen Hurts, where it's kind of surprising that Philadelphia would be the one to pick Hurts as the quarterback, being that fifth one off the board, the one after all the first round picks. But I would kind of defend the Eagles on this case. Last year, the Eagles had three separate backup quarterbacks that they had in their roster, and all three of them had gotten hurt. And also for the fact for Carson Wentz, whenever he got injured in the playoff game that they had, it got to a point against Seattle where it's like Josh McCown really couldn't give them that much benefits. So they kind of folded, and their defense couldn't hold up. But really, besides that, Davion Taylor is a solid outside linebacker option, and getting Jack Driscoll to help potentially replace Jason Peters is not a bad pick. But kind of a little substandard decision making, despite they had 10 draft picks. They filled needs, but wasn't really the best needs, especially with some positions that were still on the board. Then going to the Cowboys, where they may have gotten best value with getting CeeDee Lamb dropping all the way to 17, but they really needed to get some sort of pass rusher or cornerback in that portion to kind of offset some of their offseason losses between Byron Jones and Robert Quinn. Like, yes, they got Trevon Diggs on the following pick, which is actually pretty good value, being a fifth quarterback on the board overall, and also Neville Gallimore, getting someone to shore up the middle of the defense. They also had Travis Frederick retire in the offseason, so potentially you could have another Badger replacing him at center. But let's see if I can pronounce this right. Biadasz, I'll just go with that. He could be the potential replacement for him, but unlike Frederick, who was a late first-round pick, Biadasz is definitely a project guy, so it fits a need, but they could have gone some part sooner. But with what they got ahead of time, really not bad. Except the CeeDee Lamb pick really kind of, I know Jerry Jones was happy about it, but did they really need another offensive threat? With Amari Cooper, with Michael Gallup, with Ezekiel Elliott, with Blake Jarwin. I could have seen a tight end, but Jarwin actually was pretty solid this year. That's why they were able to get rid of Jason Witten. Then we go to the bottom half where we have the Giants and the Redskins, where the Giants kind of surprised people since they picked Andrew Thomas instead of really all the other three of the other four top offensive linemen were considered to be potentially that number one offensive tackle off the board, and the Giants would have been the first pick on it because they did need someone on to either replace Nate Solder on the left side or get someone to be a true right tackle. Thomas is probably the most solid and ready-made left tackle for them, but he also probably has the lowest ceiling out of those four, between Becton, between Wirfs, between Wills, and still not a bad one. Xavier McKinney was a good value. A lot of people saw him to be a mid-round pick around that Dallas area in the first round. Maybe Miami would have picked him at 16. But then the other part, the rest of the draft, it's more filling out an offensive line to where you really think that Nate Solder is probably going to be an odd man out for them, and maybe even more of the veteran presence on their line. Then we go with the Redskins. They got their big pick with Chase Young. They got a potential third wide receiver at this point with Antonio Gibson Sadiq Charles, despite some character concerns, he could potentially be their starting left tackle. They lost Trent Williams. Well, Trent Williams has been trying to get out of Washington for the past year and a half. They were able to trade with the 49ers for a third-round pick. So they were able to get a third and a fifth-round pick, so they were able to get some value where they picked up Gibson, they picked up Ismail, their center. But overall, you got your big pass rusher with Chase Young, even though Young really wasn't a need for them. He's just the best guy. He's the best athlete in this entire draft. So you can't blame the Redskins for going after him. But nothing too mind-blowing for the Redskins, but outside of Young, but he was going to be there. Bengals were going to pick Chase. The Bengals were going to pick Burrow, so that the first 3 picks were really kind of decided before the draft even started. But yeah, overall, I'd say Dallas still gets the best draft overall, despite picking CeeDee Lamb in a non-need position. But with this draft, there's so many wide receivers, and Lamb and Judy and Ruggs were kind of the top 3 that were a step ahead of the rest. So being the fact that he fell that far, I get it, but was it really an oversaturation of a skill he already had? And then overall, kind of a thumbs down for the Eagles. Rieger was a reach. Hurts is just going to be a backup. He's not going to do much more. I don't feel that sold on him. But he was the 5th quarterback off the board, so none terrible, but none too spectacular either. Then going into the NFC North. Then you get the team that had the most picks in the entire draft with the Eagles. There are 15 picks overall. Their last 3 picks in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round. Well, 4th, 6th, and 7th round going from the Saints. And then they were the beneficiary of the Eagles dropping on Justin Jefferson, so you're able to pick him up there. They lost 3 members of the secondary this past off season, so they got Jeff Gladney and Cameron Dantzler at Mississippi State, as well as 2 safeties in the lower half. They got DJ Wonnum out of South Carolina, another edge pass rusher to be on the other side of Danielle Hunter, because they're not going to end up bringing back Everson Griffin. And Minnesota has had a struggling offensive line for the past few years. They've steadily got better, but Ezra Cleveland is one that could be considered that 5th offensive tackle that many considered would have been a better pick than what Miami did with Austin Jackson at 18 overall. So very good value on that. So they really had the best draft probably in the NFC overall. Then we go with the Bears, and I would call them the worst of this division, but that'll be the obvious worst one. Is everyone knows who it is. But did the Bears need another tight end? They signed Jimmy Graham on the offseason. They have Trey Burton, even though he's been off injured. Cole Kmet's the top tight end in this draft. What was their primary need in this draft? Yes, they needed offensive line. They needed wide receiver. They need a better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky, but they have a project between Trubisky and Foles. So trying to rebuild that offense while still having a very strong defense. Yes, they got a quality safety to be on the opposite side of Kyle Fuller. They got a defensive end to end up helping Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and company. But there's not really much. Yes, they didn't have a first-round pick, but you're not really blown away on anything they did. But, yeah, the Packers, what the hell were y'all thinking? You're making comparisons off of the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers issue because the Packers are doing a repeat of what they did between Favre and Rodgers. They drafted Aaron Rodgers the year on the same age that Favre is 30. Favre was 36 when they drafted Rodgers, and Rodgers is 36 when they drafted Love. So if you go with some comparison on it, let me have a little fun. You get Rodgers to want to retire in the next couple of years towards the end of this contract. Then he could go to an AFC East team. Let's say if you have to go at this point with teams on it, probably the Patriots. But in that case, you don't get the Patriots to come back into their strong Bill Belichick ways. If you want to be like Favre has to struggle whenever he is for the Patriots and only be there for less than a season. Then he's going to retire again. Then Rodgers will retire again and go back to an NFC North rival with these other three teams. And really, it's probably going to end up being the Bears in that case. And then make the NFC Championship game and throw a pick in overtime. Oh, actually, no. Throw a pick late in the fourth quarter. That seals their fate. And then he'll retire finally. But yeah, besides all that, their picks for Green Bay, A.J. Dillon is going to be a good replacement for Jamal Williams, as they're not going to end up keeping him on the roster. They'll cut him for cap space. And Kamal Martin's a solid middle linebacker that they could use to replace what's the name? The Blake Martinez, that's it. That went to the Giants. Then you still have the issue with Josiah DeGuara, who I went through Mike Detillier, the Saints beat writer's draft board on all of this. He did not have DeGuara on any of his picks, and when we're going through all the pre-draft reports and all of that, he was near the bottom or nowhere to be found at all. So for the fact that he was a third-round pick, yes, they kind of need a tight end to replace Jimmy Graham, and they really haven't had a great tight end since Jermichael Finley. But the Packers, just like other teams, in this loaded draft that they had 35 wide receivers drafted, they did not draft a wide receiver in the first 6 rounds. Actually, in the entire draft, my bad. I was being a little too nice on it. Then we go to the Lions, which I still question what they're doing as well, because they traded Darius Slay for a third-round pick in this draft, which they got Jonah Jackson out of it. They got 2 guards in this draft, and then they get Jeffrey Okudah to basically replace him. Then one of the things on offense, offensively they're pretty much stacked outside of their line, but the Lions get DeAndre Swift from Georgia. Yes, he's the second running back off the board, but they just got Kerryon Johnson to have a very strong season last year, and then you're getting someone to supplement him already. It's kind of questioning on what you're trying to do. Outside of that, you really can't complain too much on it, but still not a great draft. I'd still give them like a C+. Yes, the Packers had the worst draft in the league, but just like the Rodgers situation, they could prove them wrong. Just like the Raiders did last year, thinking that the 2019 draft, the Raiders had the worst class. They made so many reaches that ended up turning out right. But going on to the NFC South, yeah. Not just because the Vikings had 15 picks, but for the fact that they found so many gems on the board and it filled every need in multiple. They probably had the best draft in the NFC. I already said that. Then we go to the NFC South, starting off with the Bucs. They got the fourth offensive tackle off the board. They had to trade up one with the 49ers, so just to make sure they would get Wirfs, and a lot of people had Wirfs at the 4th overall pick going to the Giants. So there is some there's definitely disconnect on different teams' franchises to who's the top offensive tackle and which tackle fits which scheme. But Wirfs is definitely very good value as a tackle to replace to protect Tom Brady, which they've needed. Then getting Antoine Winfield Jr., probably the fourth safety off the board, fourth best safety off the board in my opinion. Then for the fact they needed a receiving back, they get Keyshawn Vaughn, who's really more of a between the tackles guy, so kind of questionable there. They get a slot guy for Tyler Johnson out of Minnesota, and then they provide more stability in their interior defense, and then with Khalil Davis at Nebraska. So very solid draft for them. Then we go to the Saints, which for Saints fans, they are very they were questioning so much of their front office for the first round pick, signing getting Cesar Ruiz. For the fact that the Saints had a full offensive line coming back, having, especially whenever Ruiz is a center, they had Eric McCoy coming back in his second year, who was their starting center, and you had the full offensive line back. But hearing kind of the rumblings on it, you get Cesar Ruiz going into center. Eric McCoy is a guard center combo, so McCoy could switch to right guard. The Saints could either try to trade or release Larry Warford, saving about $7 million on the cap for next year, since Warford's on his last year of his contract. And really everyone else on the line, everyone else on the offensive line is set for multiple years. And then they're going to have to pay Ramczyk soon. The other picks in the draft are less questionable. Saints need an outside linebacker. Well, they need a linebacker in general to help replace A.J. Klein and to supplement, to work with Demario Davis, the only linebacker who's truly set himself apart from the rest. Yes, they do have Kiko Alonso. Yes, they have Alex Anzalone, but both have been injury prone. So getting Vaughn at a good value on it and be able to trade up to the Browns to get it, for someone who is a pass rush specialist and could cover in the middle as a Mike or a Will linebacker, someone's very versatile. The Adam Troutman pick is interesting for the fact that they have Jared Cook, Josh Hill. I hear Garrett Griffin still being there. He may still be gone, but he's a receiving option and someone who could split out in the slots and kind of could be like a third receiver behind Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So it makes sense, but you could see cap casualties also because he does kind of fit the same role as Jared Cook. So that will be something to watch. Then they trade back in for Tommy Stevens, and if they're trying to be subtle about this, they're not doing a very good job. So I'm going to go over the full Saints quarterback situation in another video, but Tommy Stevens is essentially going to be a Taysom Hill replacement. Just at this point, probably not as big or strong. Well, let me rephrase that. Not as good of a passer or a runner. He is physical, but kind of the same way. Stevens is definitely less injury prone than Hill was in college. That's just saying. Then we go down to Atlanta, where you realize that Atlanta was so set on taking a cornerback in this draft on their first pick that it didn't matter if, like, they were hoping C.J. Henderson out of Florida was still going to be on the board. So they reached for the next one on their board, even though I'd say there's a couple more ahead of him. But A.J. Terrell out of Clemson, who had times last season, especially in the LSU game, but really everyone had struggled in that one. But yeah, Struggled against the top line receivers when we went against Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who's gonna be a top 10 pick at least next year. So he would have been a late first round projection at best, potentially in the second round. But outside of that, they get an edge rusher with Marlon Davidson to hopefully replace and supplement Vic Beasley's loss. They get Matt Hennessy as center after drafting a center last year and it not turning out well whenever he was injured. Because the only offensive lineman that's really got their position set is their left tackle, Jake Matthews. Outside of that, everyone could easily be replaced. Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, I could go on, but it'll last too long. Jalen Hawkins is a solid pick at safety. He could be a steal. They need someone to work the other side with Keanu Neal. He is more of a deep safety, so wherever Keanu Neal will end up coming into the box. But not a great draft, but they did fill some needs. Then we go with the team that really filled their need with everything on defense with Carolina. 7 picks, all 7 defensive players. Matt Rule had one plan for this entire draft in his first year. Fix that defense that gave up 29 points a game. They do that very quickly. I thought they were going to go with Isaiah Simmons, but getting Derek Brown, it's not that surprising. Then to get an edge rusher, defensive end, Yetur Gross-Matos out of Penn State. I had him as like that third edge rusher behind Chassaw and Chase Young, and he definitely was a good value pick on there. A lot of people had Jeremy Chin as their second or third overall safety in this draft, so he is one that I did not mention, but he could be considered a steal. Other people had higher grades on him, so I'm not surprised he was a late second-round pick. Then they used the rest of their picks to pretty much go after more in the secondary and another linebacker. So if they're trying to improve their defense, they definitely went forward on that. But the only problem is, did you really find someone who could really solidify and replace Luke Kuechly? That's all I'm saying. That's why I would have gone with Isaiah Simmons for them. But still, probably the second best draft at the NFC South. Saints is odd but understandable. They kind of have their front office has some leeway to be able to say that they know what they're doing. But yeah, Tampa Bay best, Atlanta. Then with the last one, NFC West, we go with 49ers, where even though they had 5 picks, they filled every need they had. Javon Kinlaw replaced DeForest Buckner. Brandon Ayuk and Jawan Jennings replaced Emmanuel Sanders. Colton McKivitz replaces Joe Staley, who just retired very recently before the draft and could be a younger option as they get Trent Williams in. So they have someone who could be a potential left tackle after that point. So the only questionable one is kind of Charles Warner, because he's a very strong blocking tight end. So he is going to be very good for their offense. That is only going to be a 2 running back system more than likely. But the fact that they traded Matt Breida to the Dolphins, and then that's what they'll still have Tevin Coleman and what's the name? Oh, and Raheem Mostert. So it definitely, Warner does fit into how their scheme is to be a blocking tight end, and at best he'll probably end up being a number 2 tight end behind George Kittle. So with what they had in their draft, everyone kind of filled a need. Then we go to the Cardinals, where they were able to split. They were able to get the falling Isaiah Simmons, where people had him potentially going 4th overall. And Simmons being a linebacker safety combination does kind of remind you of whenever where they had the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. Simmons is kind of a bigger form of that, probably a better cover guy, and a strong playmaker. So having him fall to them was pretty convenient. It did make it a little surprising that they didn't go after an offensive lineman in the first round, for the fact that Kyler Murray was tied for the most times being sacked in the league last year. But they did get Josh Jones in the third round, who I had as a 5th overall offensive tackle, which I could have seen as easily a late round pick in the first. Then for a defense that is still trying to recover from those lost years of Carlos Dansby, Calais Campbell, Tyrann Mathieu, and I can go on. They do help out their front seven with Leaky Fotu, Rashard Lawrence, and Evan Weaver. Weaver being one that's going to be a sneaky sleeper, a solid pick in the 6th round. But with 6 picks overall, they did fill a lot of their needs. Then we go with the Rams, where for the past 4 years they haven't had a first round pick. Now they get Cam Akers in the 2nd round to hopefully replace Todd Gurley and at worst be a second back to Malcolm Brown potentially. Then they get Van Jefferson to replace Brandon Cooks. They get Terrell Lewis to replace Corey Littleton. And they needed a tight end option that's not just what's the name? Hopkins could end up being someone who could be potentially more productive than their 2 main tight ends, Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee, because they've shown potential but haven't really branched out too much in the offense. So it all fits. Their picks all fit needs, or at least early on, and everything else works on depth. So not a bad draft. Then we go with the Seattle Seahawks for the last one in the draft. And they get a linebacker who kind of fits the same style as Bobby Wagner with Jordan Brooks. But most people had him as a 2nd round grade. Not too much of a reach, but just a touch. Then they go back on the typical line of still needing to get offensive linemen to protect Russell Wilson. As I said with Kyler Murray, and I think this might be a trend with shorter quarterbacks who are mobile, they have problems not getting sacked. So they get Damian Lewis in the interior. So that's going to help out for a consistently struggling offensive line. They get Colby Parkinson to help out Luke Wilson at tight end, because they still don't really have that much production for the tight end position. And then they grab DJ Dallas from Miami, for the fact that they had 3 of their running backs get injured late last season, and having to get Marshawn Lynch to come back. I don't expect Lynch to come back, but Dallas is one that can be more of a Lynch style back, but he doesn't have as much power, and he's not gonna break away. He's gonna be a solid backup, but it's kind of what you expect for a 4th round pick. So really, yeah, with San Francisco, what they had, they did very well. And then early on picks for Seattle was a little questionable, but sure, towards the middle round it did improve for them. But still the worst of this part of the NFC. So that is all the NFL draft. Let me know any comments in the suggestion on what y'all want to hear next. So I will end up doing a Saints quarterback conversation, for the fact that I'm sure most people have heard at this point the Saints have signed Jameis Winston to a contract, a 1-year deal. So you can see you're going to see 4 different quarterbacks potentially on the roster. I don't expect that to be, but I'll go more on that in another video. But with all that being said, Thank y'all for watching. Please like, subscribe. Please share it out to other people. There's going to be sports content all the time. A lot of this is going to be based off of the draft for the near future until we find out any more details on what's going to happen next. But yeah, thank y'all for watching. I'm the Contained Kunas. This is Stats 7 Sports. Y'all stay safe. See y'all next time.